I always think of like sales and dating very, very similarly. If you need them to say yes, that's like the needy is creepy energy. You are the only prospect that I have right now, and I need you to marry me. Please, for the love of God, please marry me.
Oh, I can't believe I've never heard that before.
If you're a coach whose paycheck is dependent on your next sale, having a day job is actually a good thing. Just because if you're financially dependent on the next sale, the energetics of that is like, you are going to make more concessions, you're going to oversell, you're going to have the energy of like, please, like the buyer-seller dynamic is a little bit off. In the same way, like when you're dating, if there's like one person that you're fixated on, you don't have any other prospects, right? Like you think like the one person is going to be the source of your happiness. And like, you don't know how to like get another date for the life of you. You don't have any other women like who are kind of into you. You're going to go all in and you're going to make concessions. You're going to end up ruining the dynamic of that relationship and they're going to leave you anyway. God. And I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
Gosh.
Tell me I'm wrong.
I can confirm that that's true through lived experience. Both from the needy salesman and the devoted to someone that isn't devoted back, and that not being very nice for either person.
There's a mindset side where it's like, you got to be okay with tension. You have to be able to like be okay with the no, but it's like, how are you going to be okay with a no if that no means you're not going to eat, or that's the last lead on your calendar for the next 3 weeks and rent is in 3 weeks and like you don't know where the next lead is coming from. You need that yes from that lead that's in front of you, versus if you have like 10 calls on your calendar, even 5 no's, you're like, 5 no's, 5 yeses, I'm good. Because we're closing 50%. At least.
It was 5.
The idea is like, you want to create good lead generation systems so that you have a steady influx of people coming in so that you don't have that anxiety of like, oh, I need this person to say yes. Because you're not going to be discerning. You're going to take on clients that maybe you don't even want to work with. Beggars can't be choosers. And you end up being a beggar. And the buyer-seller dynamic just gets thrown way off. This is why in the system that we teach, there's a very strong lead generation system that makes it so that like when you're doing the mindset work around your sales and all the other elements of your business, you're not trying to use mindset as a cope for shitty business. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Conscious Grounding Podcast with myself, Anthony Manuel, and introducing my best friend, my business partner, and the new co-host of this podcast, Matthew Finlin. We are having elevated conversations kept down to earth. I wanted to bring Matthew on because he is, like I said, my best friend, my business partner, and someone who I love to talk about. We chat for hours about everything and anything, and all the conversations that we have, I'm like, damn it, this should be a podcast. So for all the future conversations, we're going to be doing double team for the guests that we bring on, and we're just going to be having some conversations, he and I. And this is going to be the new format of the podcast because it's my podcast. I can do what I want. Technically, it's our podcast now. And really, really looking forward to having more discussions oriented around personal development through the lens of business development, because Matthew and I are business coaches, first and foremost. Conscious Grounding started as a podcast that looked at the broader scale spectrum of the human sides of personal development, kind of looking at the descent side of, some shadow work elements, some of the counterculture movements against ascension culture, and like sort of spiritually bypassing your way through everything, every challenge with positivity. And, you can't talk about personal development without the development of other areas of your life. You can't talk about it without talking about relationships. But I think the biggest area of my life that I have experienced personal development has been through my entrepreneurial journey, because it's forced me to become a different person in order to actually execute on the parts of my business that I wanted to bring out into the world. If I wanted to have different results in my business, I had to become a different person. And that's really what I want to talk about on today's podcast, is talk about the blocks that people have when they're trying to set out to create something new in the world. Recently, I've been having some interesting conversations with people who want to work with Matthew and I, but they're coming up against not blocks around fear of failure, but nervousness around the fear of success or fear of the person that they have to become, the disruption to their life that is going to happen in order for them to step into being this new person that is going to have this greater level of success. There has to be some sort of an ego death that's associated with becoming a different version of yourself and living a different life. So I wanted to talk to Matthew specifically about this because he's a freaking genius on the mindset side, and he has just dialed in the nervous system's role in business and in sales and everything. But before we get into any of that, I'm going to let people get to know you a little bit more. So Matthew, hi, what's up, man? Do you want to tell the audience elevator pitch version of who you are, a little bit of your backstory, how we got connected from the horse's mouth?
Wow, elevator pitch style. Okay.
Or not. Yeah. We're on a podcast. It's our podcast. We can talk as long as we want.
Well, first off, I'm super excited about this. Working with you has been easy and very fun. Easy and fun, simple and fun. It feels like what spiritual people would call alignment. So that feels great. Spiritual people would call alignment. Okay, yeah, elevator pitch from me. Like Anthony, the business and spiritual paths have crossed for me in a big way through kind of this like lens of personal development. I'm from a small town in British Columbia, Canada. Originally, I didn't even know what commissions were until I was 20 years old when I got hired to do door-to-door sales, and it blew my mind. I actually asked in the interview if it was illegal what they were doing. Because I didn't know. Yeah, and they literally laughed at me. So didn't know anything, just showed up. They told me if you do ABC, people pay you at the door. Didn't believe them, but it worked, and I was excellent at it. And got promoted. I moved out to Ontario where I was training my own teams, and I was also excellent at that. And this is where really, I think my spiritual journey like really started to develop, because I began to learn about psychology and neuroscience. And at the time, I was dating somebody that was a born-again Christian neuroscientist student. And so she had a really interesting view on the creation side of the brain. And I was learning it and applying it, and I was training teams and raising teams. And I quickly realized, this was, 12 years ago now. Wow, 12 years ago now, that if I just trained people how to do sales, they were terrible at sales and they would quit. And so every day I had a sales boardroom training meeting right before we went out into field, again, door-to-door sales. And I learned that if you train people how to have strong minds, strong bodies, good relationships, and how to get sales, they were excellent at sales and they wouldn't quit. And so I basically did kind of like a TED Talks. I used to be addicted to TED Talks. I probably listened to like 5 a day, like every day probably. And so I was teaching about circadian health and exercise and all these things. And I grew really big, successful teams. Unfortunately, I had zero financial education, and I was 20. And so I was like, making $2K a week and spending $3K a week, and I landed myself in a bad position. I lost all my offices, and I was basically by myself again, going door to door in debt in minus 25-degree Ontario weather. And so that was a character building couple of years for me. Ended up coming back to Vancouver, back to the West Coast, back to BC where I'm from. And I got showed an opportunity, which I'm still a part of. It's called Enagic, Kangen Water Machines. The business opportunity is the best direct sales opportunity that I have yet to see. And so I stopped everything. I started doing that. That was awesome. I had a really deep spiritual experience that involved DMT, which opened my eyes to, I guess just to put it really simply, I ended up finding Hermeticism and the Hermetic principles after that. And that brought a brand new take to my biblical neuroscience, psychology, and it started filling in a lot of missing pieces for me, I ended up recruiting a friend from Hong Kong onto my team. And so I flew to Hong Kong for 3 weeks and ended up moving there for 3 years. and got to live in Asia for 3 years. I was doing some different business level things over there. I got an amazing opportunity to work with this company that did high level acquisitions. So in 6 years, I went from not knowing what commissions were to like going through all of the different kind of business things you have to do to doing and being involved with, and certainly being a fly on the wall for a lot of like massive deals between big companies. So that was really, really blessed. I ended up going through, I guess, my second spiritual awakening after one New Year's Eve that looked like a Scarface scene. And I had a hangover for like 5-6 days. And so I was in this cognitive dissonance, right? Like I had this spiritual connection to God, intuition, but then I was still in Scarface mode. And, for lack of better words, you get it. And then I saw my other best friend, Luke, doing his 100 days of discipline, 100 days of sweaty sweats or something. And him and I used to be known to drink a bottle of Jameson's each. And now he's healthy and strong and happy. And he's doing this 100-day exercise challenge. So I started doing that. And that was like my second like big one for me is it unlocked my mental discipline. So I was doing way better at my business, crushing the to-do list, physical pillar opening up, mental discipline, relationships building better, because self-discipline is your capacity for love, because it's your capacity for your own self-love. So relationships improving. Then my spiritual obviously was taking off as well. Ended up coming back to Canada, Chinese COVID level lockdowns, just to land in Canada to their Chinese COVID level lockdowns. And I didn't really know if I was going to stay or how I was going to leave. And I was kind of like building this 100 days business, working with my Kongan team, blah, blah, blah. And then I decided to, I gave a friend of mine coaching advice. She was a Qigong yoga practitioner in Vancouver. And I gave her some advice on how to get sales. And while I was giving her advice, I said she should find a niche. I was like, aha, this is a niche. Okay, I'm going to be a coach. So I started helping spiritual entrepreneurs actually make money. That's how I pitched it. Like, you don't need to go work a job, Monday. My first paid client, she was literally serving beer at Canucks games and then helping people with breath work and their traumas. And so just the cognitive dissonance, yeah, it was a big alley. So I started doing that, and it worked exceptionally. I just got result after result after result after result until I basically had made more money in like a 5-month period than I think I ever had. I was like, I'm onto something here. And so then I became an official coach after coaching people on these things for 8 years. Then I started to refine it. I, through a series of events, currently live in Peru. I've been in the official business coaching for 3.5 years now, I guess, but I've been coaching people on sales and health for 12. I live in Peru. I have a retreat center, and I think that's probably like a nice, quick, not necessarily an elevator pitch, but that kind of gets the gist.
3,000-foot view, yeah.
Yeah.
It's the thing that I really loved that you talked about is when you just taught people sales skills, they sucked at sales and they were miserable and they quit. Mm-hmm. And, realizing that it's like, oh no, like you actually have to have all the other elements of your life in order for you to show up 100% to do that type of work. And, I think that's why I was like so stoked to work with you, is because that's a big part of my work as well, where I'd be teaching someone, the systems of like, oh, like this is how you build a funnel. This is how we're going to create your offer. And they get all excited about it, but then they don't actually do anything, and they kind of get frustrated and they like want to quit. And I'm like, well, why? What's happening here? What's the what the step is, like, take the step. And then having to realize that, no, there's mental blocks associated with moving forward. There are other, self-belief systems that are in place here. And it's not just about like learning the step to do, because if it was just learning the step to do, you just Google the step. You'd go on ChatGPT and be like, what do I do next? And you do the next thing, and then you'd get the result. But there's some form of inner transformation that happens to become like the version of self that is not only capable of doing it, because I think we're all capable of doing a lot of things, but it's the willingness and the belief or the identity with the action and the behavior that I'm really fascinated by. And so I'd love to talk a little bit about, your experience with what are some of the big blocks that people have when they're stepping in, not even just from sales, but when they're stepping in and they're starting to put themselves out there as an authority, or they're starting to market themselves, they're starting to put themselves out. I have a couple of things that I'll bounce off as well, but what do you notice are some of the big blocks that people have?
I think the biggest block is, which is actually quite surprising to say right now, but is actually a lack of the proper knowledge. And recently, Hormozy was talking about, I can't remember if this had to do with startups or just business in general, but he said something along the lines of skill plus volume equals success. And this is something, again, in door-to-door sales, my first week on the job, I learned something that I teach everybody and have taught and constantly bring up. It's a pillar of any successes I've had in anything in life, and it's called the law of averages. And so when I was referring to the knowledge, it was that the law of averages is it. And you're going to have more no's than yeses. And there's going to be a lot more no's than yeses, likely. And people don't remember the no's. I can't remember the exact stat, but it's something like, Michael Jordan or something. He successfully got I think it was 23%, might be more, might be less, can't remember, of his game-winning shots, right? Can anyone name any game off the top of their head where he had a game-missing shot? He could have won it, but he missed it. No. But we can literally all picture that classic one where he's flying through the air sideways and the camera's going off and he shoots and he wins. I think it was the game 6 to actually win. It was just amazing. We remember that. And that's the same thing. I'm working with one of my clients right now, and this is just the game, the peaks and the valleys, knowing that these peaks and valleys are going to come and that you're going to have a week of just no. And then the next week, you're going to get the highest paying client you've ever got. And that's what one of my clients is going through that. He went through that right now. He started, it was great. Lots of results. And it plateaued and it dipped. And then he closed a one-on-one client instead of just in the group program. And he calls me elated, right? Elated. So I would say that the biggest block is that people quit and or pivot instead of just doing the reps, instead of just getting enough data to actually see if it makes sense to double down, pivot. But that's the big one is and this is what I teach in this is what I used to teach, and this is what I'm going to be teaching in our program, which is this is adversity and adaptability and resiliency and the math behind success.
Yeah, you have that term adversity quotient, and I think of it almost as staying power, right? When I was getting into life coaching, I was learning from a book called The Prosperous Coach by Rich Litvin and Steve Chandler. And I was being coached by someone who was coached by someone who was coached. It was kind of like the lineage, the coach lineage was Rich Litvin down to me. And One of the games or one of the activities that you do is there's 2 games. You play the no game and the money game. The money game is you, in a month, you try to hit a certain amount of money in proposals. So not how much money are you making, how much money are you proposing in offers, right? And so you might set a $500,000 goal. So you have to figure out how many proposals am I going to have to make and at what price to hit that $500,000 mark in the next 90 days, 90-day money game. And then the no game is literally trying to make outlandish requests that people say no to, and you're trying to get as many no's as possible. And so that could be anything from can you do a call right now to will you pay me $15,000 for a month of coaching, right? And you'd get as many no's as you could, specifically just to get into the routine of being able to receive no's, to be told no and not have it mean anything about you. I think the whole fear of rejection thing, fear of and what that means. There's a primal part of our brains, right, that kind of associates rejection with rejection from the tribe, which back in the day would mean we died. You get kicked out of the tribe, you're left to fend for yourself in the wilderness alone, and you would die. You would not be able to make it on your own. So as tribal creatures, we have something primitive and like there's like, it's in our genes to not want to, upset people or get rejected necessarily. But we can also train our brains to just deal with that rejection. It was funny, the first time that I ever made over $20,000 in a month, and actually the first time I ever made any real amount of money coaching, was when I was making offers that I thought people would say no to. And to at the place that my brain was at, I was like, there's no way anyone would ever pay me $5,000 for coaching. And so, but I kept asking people, and then I would get like bolder, and I'd ask for like 6,000, and I was like, fuck, I'm gonna ask for 8,000. I was like, shit, all these people are saying yes. I got to step up my game now, right? But so I think it's a cross between exposure therapy. There is a little bit of the belief work around like, hey, why are you afraid of getting that no in the first place? What's the worst thing that's going to happen with a no? Why are you being so discouraged by a no? Why is that? One of the things that I love about the way you and I both operate is there's no losses, only data. And that's a big mental frame where it's like, okay, like you're constantly iterating, you're constantly gathering data. You're like, obviously, like if someone says no, or someone, isn't locked in with you necessarily, it's like, that's not a loss. That is a data point that you can use to iterate for the next time you have a conversation. If you're looking at it that way, that's another hemorrhaging thing, right? Is you only lose when you quit. You only like fail if you stop going for it, instead of iterating and continuing and testing.
Yeah, in the first 3 months when I work with people, it's just data. Aim for success, but you're just taking data. Because a lot of the times when I'm working with coaches, it's like, they've either brand new or they've had some sort of successes, but they can't breach. They're currently not breaching this X amount that they're making each month. And so you have to try new things. You have to go into vision mode. You sometimes have to break things you've already built that have got you up to maybe 5K a month, and you're feeling like, whoa, like I'm at a 60K a year. I'm chilling. I can travel. I'm doing what I want, but I want to get to 10K. And then along I come, and I'm like, oh, that needs to go. And they're like, but that's the thing. It's like, yeah, but what got you to where you are won't get you to where you need to go next. And so that's always a really big. I mean, it's big for me. It's big for everybody. That's a whoa type of thing to go through. So when you're doing these businesses, you're constantly, especially these days, how fast things are. It's like you're in like a state of kind of like changing with time as it moves forward, which obviously sounds self-explanatory. But yeah, it can be intense to lean into the why does rejection affect me so much? Mm-hmm. Right? Like why, and obviously the internet's a vicious place, right? So like that's also a big, I think, a big aspect of it. Yeah. You're just taking data though.
And I will say the benefit to say hiring us as business coaches is like, we have years and years and years of data about what kind of systems work and don't work. Like our whole thing is like, for context, guys, we help coaches make $12,000 to $25,000 a month in about 3 months on average. And we use a system that has been able to like reproduce that reliably because it's a system that we have tested and iterated over time. And it solves a lot of the problems around people's buyer's resistance, and it helps people get specific, but it does require people to change fundamentally what they've been doing in the past, right? Like I had one client recently who has a really good social media following, but had very inconsistent months in the coaching programs that he was selling. And his engagement online was really, really good, but like the business itself wasn't super focused. And there was this dissonance where it's like, yeah, but I'm getting this like great, they call it vanity metrics, the likes, comments, and shares and followers, but I'm not converting and I don't really know. And it required him to let go of some of the marketing messaging that he was using that was getting the likes, comments, and shares, and get very specific about a certain problem that he was solving. And part of him was like, fuck, like, am I really going to step out and start talking just about this now? Am I going to take everything that I've done? I'm going to maybe alienate my audience a little bit. Irony was like, he ended up gaining 10,000 followers. But there is that like that moment of dissonance where it's like, yeah, but like this thing that I've had that's been working over here, it's like, yeah, but this thing that's working over here is stopping you from having the thing that you actually want. And there's a lot of the attachment to the old identity piece is it's a challenging one for people to work through. I think like what I've noticed, I have conversations with friends often when things have gotten really bad in our lives, or like we go through a breakup or something blows up, or like some sort of like thing that resembles a dark night of the soul. And we have this big breakthrough revelation. It's like, did we have to let it get this bad before we made this change, before we had this, coming into consciousness? And it's always that question is like, do you have to let it get this painful before you learn the thing and actually make the change? And in a lot of cases, I think like human nature, yes, you absolutely do. And, what I heard once that I found really interesting is when you pay a coach a large sum of money that feels like a stretch for you, that payment is a proxy for the pain that you would feel that would instigate change. And
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I've felt that.
Yeah. Yeah, you get the palms sweating, you're like, damn it. But I was also talking on my Instagram story this morning, actually, about the phenomenon of when you do make that commitment, you do decide to like, you make the payment, you take the leap, you're like, all right, I'm committing to this. I'm going to like trust this person and their guidance. I'm going to do the things that I need to do to get to the next step. Like as soon as you make the commitment, there is like this energetic shift that happens. And I've seen this again and again, like both with myself and people who decide to sign up with me. As soon as someone makes the decision, there's like a bunch of synchronicities that start happening. Things start lining up for them even before they even make changes. Like I remember signing up for coaching once, and the next day I signed a client without doing any additional marketing. I was like, that was weird. But it happened like multiple times. And then I noticed when I was signing business coaching clients, that would happen to them. Like they would be blocked in some way. And then them making the commitment through the payment or through the decision, when the energy of a commitment shifts something and it unblocks something and it lets the flow open again.
Yeah, I've seen that time and time again and experienced it myself too. When I paid coaches, it's like you pay a coach, make more than you want to, and then you feel a little pinched, and then you get a client, and then a sale happens. Something happens in that way. It seems to happen a lot, and actually, it's probably one of my favorite things, that energetic shift between coaches and clients, where like you make the proposition, they want to do it, and that they're feeling a little squeezed about the financial investment, and they know it, and they know that you know it, and you're just in this like this little like tensity. Then they finally make the commitment. It's kind of like, okay, great. And as the coach, it like allows you to like, okay, good. Like, here's the next step. I've been wanting to do this. I've been waiting to do this. Here's the next step. Then they get the next step and they're like, oh, okay, my money, I didn't waste it. Yeah. Because there's always that like, they don't really know everything that's going to happen. And then they commit and then they get it. It's like, I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling good. It's just, I don't know. I've been in sales a long time. If it's $1,000 plus, a couple $1,000 for almost everybody, even if they really, really want it, when they're signing the paper, like there's a part of them that's like, like you really, really want that car, and then you go there and you have enough money for it, and it's like, wow, am I really putting 30,000 on this right now? Like, it's pretty crazy. I could travel and become healthy and all the. It's like you really want it. For me, it happens even with plane tickets, and I love to travel, but I'm like, as I'm doing it, and booking it, like, there's always that kind of attention, and that is because I did door-to-door sales. That's something I learned pretty early on. Is that it's in that tension that makes or breaks the sale most of the time. As a lot of times what ends up happening, I have this process, and there comes a point where you go from presenting what you're selling to closing the sale. And what ends up happening is there's kind of this like window of opportunity that comes by for you to present it, and you present it. You know, you hit the window, you present it. And what ends up happening a lot of the time is instead of like remaining in the closing section of the process, people go back to presenting and back to selling. So you'll be like, yeah, it's only $6,000 to work with us for 12 weeks. And in that silence there is where people get squirrely and they start selling again. There's some sort of quote that it's like once the proposition has been made, the next person to talk loses. And I've seen this. Like this is the real truth. And so it's like a lot of people, because they're not confident in themselves, they're not confident in their offer. Maybe it's the most they've ever asked for before. When there's silence or even questions is a big one. People mistake questions for objections. Do I have to pay you all at once? The answer is like, yes. Right? Instead of like, well, like, no, or maybe we could like, do a like, and they make it into an objection. Instead of just saying like, yes, or there's monthly payment plans. They'll go like, yeah, and the reason is because, So that's a really big one, is mistaking a question during closing time as an objection when it's really just a question. Mm-hmm. And then in the silence, going back to selling. So it's $6,000 to work with us for 12 weeks, and then it's silent. And then they go like, yeah, and like I really, really believe that like Anthony is gonna have the ABC sauce for you, like we talked about already. And they just go back to the process, then it ends up in this loop. And there isn't ever a close because they go back to the like, okay, so yeah, it's $6,000 for 12 weeks. But now they're stuck in this loop. So yeah.
Well, I think that goes back to the discomfort with a no, where you can sit in the silence, you can make the proposition and sit and wait for them to figure it out themselves. If you're okay with them saying no,
mm-hmm.
If you're okay with, it's like, and there's an energetics thing to that as well. Like I always think of like sales and dating very, very similarly, where if you need them to say yes, that's like the needy is creepy energy. Right? Where it's like, you are the only prospect that I have right now, and I need you to marry me. Please, for the love of God, please marry me. They're going to turn tail and run. But if you're like, I'm good.
Needy is creepy, dude.
You want?
Oh, I can't believe I've never heard that before.
Needy That's another Steve Chandler from that book, The Prosperous Coach. Needy is creepy.
Okay.
This is actually where I think lead generation is also really important. And if you're a coach whose paycheck is dependent on your next sale, having a day job is actually a good thing. And like, just because if you're financially dependent on the next sale, the energetics of that is like, you are going to make more concessions. You're going to oversell. You're going to have the energy of like, please, oh my God. Like the buyer seller dynamic is a little bit off, right? Mm-hmm. Where in an ideal situation, like in our case right now, we were kind of laughing. We just opened up our books for new clients and we were laughing. We're like, shit, we're going to have to close our books like in a week. Cause like we just started taking on clients. We're almost full. And that's a good problem to have, but it's like, well, what are we going to do if we have all these leads? And like, that means that we can like be more discerning about who we're working with. We can say no to people if we're like, I don't think this person is going to get like they'll still get results, but I'm not going to have as much fun working with them. Right. And like, so I'm not going to take these guys on. Maybe I'll send them over here. I'll put them in this course with our buddies or whatever. But like, we have the luxury of choice right now. Right. And in the same way, like when you're dating, if there's like one person that you're fixated on, you don't have any other prospects, right? Like you think like the one person is going to be the source of your happiness. And like, you don't know how to like get another date for the life of you. You don't have any other women like who are kind of into you. You're going to go all in and you're going to make concessions and you're going to end up, ruining the dynamic of that relationship and they're going to leave you anyway. God. And I mean, tell me I'm wrong.
gosh.
Tell me
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
I can confirm that that's true through lived experience. Yeah, both
So
from the needy salesman and the um devoted to someone that isn't devoted back, and that
yes.
not not being very nice for either person.
So the lead generation piece, it's funny because like there's there's a mindset side where it's like you got to be okay with tension. You have to be able to like be okay with the no, but it's like how are you going to be okay with a no if that no means you're not going to eat, you know? And so or you like or that's the last lead on your calendar for the next 3 weeks and rent is in 3 weeks and like you don't know where the next lead is coming from. You need that yes from that lead that's in front of you versus if you have like 10 calls on your calendar, even 5 no's, you're like, 5 no's, 5 yeses, I'm good, you know, because we're closing 50% at least.
It was fine.
But like anyway, the idea is like we want to create good lead generation systems so that you have a steady influx of people coming in so that you don't have that anxiety of like, oh, I need this person to say yes, because you're not going to be discerning. You're going to take on clients that maybe you don't even want to work with. Like you get into a place where it's like beggars can't be choosers and you end up being a beggar and the buyer seller dynamic just gets thrown way off. And so this is why it's like, you know, this is why in the system that we teach, there's a very strong lead generation system that makes it so that like when you're doing the mindset work around your sales and all the other elements of your business, you're not trying to use mindset as a cope for shitty business.
Okay, that's interesting. You asked me earlier about the blocks or the lack of whatever, why people aren't closing sales. So like, what do you think are the blocks or situations people are going through when it comes to making the content and posting the content? Because I know that's a huge thing.
Yep, I think there's a gazillion. I think there's fundamentally there's a fear of being seen, the fear of being judged, but I think there's I think the fear of being seen is a really, really big one. And what you notice, there's a trend in the coaching space right now where people are talking about like making authentic content, right? And then, you know, these people are talking about making one of my friends, Chase, he was actually a coach of mine a while back. He posted something today. He's like, all these people are talking about posting authentic content and they're not even taking the time to edit their obvious AI captions. Right. And there's just this I'm gonna try and articulate something that I have noticed is a block for a lot of people. When people are speaking with conviction and authenticity about the thing that they are really good at, that has power and energy that comes out of it. The problem is that it doesn't often reach a lot of people, and it's not formatted in a way such that it's clear what problem they're solving and what niche they're helping. And so you go in and you start to fix some of the marketing message or some of the linguistic challenges that they have around how they're presenting their information. But what happens is people get in their head and they start to think more about the marketing and more about how they should show up and how like they start to think about like, oh, I have to present myself in this way. I have to use this hook and I have to use this and I have to have a call to action. They get so wrapped up in the formula of how it's marketed that they become robotic and they become less authentic in this process of the framework. And so people end up, I think the big block is the should, right? How should I show up? How should I present myself? The biggest blocks that people have to creating content and being seen is their fucking ego. It's like trying to create either a persona and trying to create an image of perfection and an image of themselves as like being perfectly in integrity with everything that they talk about and teach, and that if they're seen as human, then no one's going to want to buy from them. It's the same sort of scarcity mindset, right? Where if people don't see me as perfect, then people aren't going to value me and people aren't going to want to buy from me and I'm not going to be an authority. And then what ends up happening is there's the cognitive dissonance that we were talking about, right? Where you're doing all this like healing and trauma work, but you're selling beer on the weekends. There's a part of you that feels like a fake. There's a part of you that feels very, very misaligned. And when you start to, and I'm talking about like from personal experience and then working with other clients, when you start to try and create an image of yourself with your content online as being perfect, as being an authority, but you're still human. You still have struggles. You're still doing the dumb shit. You still have your bad habits. You still have your vices. You still mess up, and you're trying to hide that from people. You start spending an inordinate amount of energy trying to preserve this persona and this image of perfection. And it creates a lot of anxiety and a lot of cognitive dissonance. What happens is people start to trust themselves less, because they feel like they're feeding a lie. They're creating this false persona, and fundamentally they know they're lying because they're not this image. That lack of trust starts to be felt by their audience because they don't trust themselves, so their audience doesn't trust them, and then their clients don't trust them. And so this dissonance between who they're pretending to be or who they feel they should be or how they feel they should present themselves and who they actually believe themselves to be, that ends up being the biggest block around creating content.
Okay.
Now, in order for them to overcome that, they have to get over this hurdle of like showing up as imperfect, being willing to say, hey, I really struggle with this. This is how I'm dealing with it as an expert who deals with this type of problem. Even though I coach people on this, I still struggle with XYZ. Right? Bro, I have been coaching people on time management and entrepreneurship and focus and how to overcome procrastination. I still haven't even started the first video for our lead magnet.
It's really excellent that, okay, there's two things that I want to, actually three things that I want to bring up. And the first one is like the cognitive dissonance, because this has been something that I've been focused on for a really long time. And what happens with cognitive dissonance is two things which you brought up. Okay, so cognitive dissonance leads to backwards rationalization. Backwards rationalization is when you basically, it's making perceived justifiable excuses. Justifiable excuses is backwards rationalization. We can go into more of that later, but what ends up happening with cognitive dissonance is you start saying something like, and this is why time management is so important too. You say like, I'm going to wake up every day at 7 a.m. and then you don't. Right? Alarm goes off, you hit the thing. You're like, okay, I'm going to start exercising every day. And then you don't. Well, what ends up start happening is people don't understand about our brains is like we're constantly running the program and making the program. And so now what you're doing is you're making a program that runs, that says, when I say I want to do X, I don't do the things that lead me to X. So now you start saying to yourself, I really want to have a successful business. Or a really popular one, I really want to be in a loving relationship. And you've been running this program that goes, when you say you want something, you don't do it. And that's the program, because if you didn't die, the brain is like, this is good. Like, if you didn't die, the program's working. So you start making this program. This is why not lying to yourself, first and foremost, is so important for alignment, for success, and for actually getting what you want, is because your subconscious mind is super, 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 is 1,000 steps ahead. And so you start saying these things and the program is, all right, I'm not going to go get it. That's going to be what's going to happen. And then this is what ends up leading to, I think, what people will label as self-sabotage.
Right. Is the yeah, dude, that's, I mean, and as someone who has lied to himself a lot of his life can confirm, it's like it's hell. Lying to yourself and to others is how you bring yourself to hell.
Yeah,
that dissonant space is it's hell.
And there's like the lying by omission, right? Which is kind of what we're talking about almost with this, because you keep using the word trust recession on the internet. And the way that you have been describing it is brilliant and accurate. And I know because it's my exact experience. Like I'm scrolling through, I have my 30 minutes of watching whatever pops up on my algorithm, and it's a coach. And they're really like, hey! And I'm like, nope, next. like, no, I want to learn something. I don't want to get pitched. And I'm not even getting past because I have this block. And I think that a lot of it has to do with myself included. Okay. Coaches have been lying for years. And they've been saying I'm a millionaire when they're not a millionaire. They've been saying I'm super healthy when they're sick on the weekends. They've been saying I'm a relationship coach, I'm a tantra coach when they are consistently sabotaging and destroying their own relationships. And so, like, a lot of times, maybe all the time, you say, what is it, like your it's something like your, dang it, I wish I remembered it, your something like your trauma becomes your medicine or something like that. I can't remember what the quote is. And it's true.
Your mess becomes your message.
Your mess becomes your message. Yeah. Okay. So why is that true? Well, a coach is someone that's gone into a particular type of hell and made it out. And then they see other people in that same particular type of hell and they're like, I'm going to help you out of that. That's a coach. A wannabe coach is someone that is in the hell and they are learning how to get out of the hell, but they are not yet out of the hell. And they start teaching people how to get out of the hell that they are not yet out of because they haven't figured it out. And I see this so much with men and women doing men's coaching and women's coaching. That's like the go-to spot for it. I help men. It's like you're needing help. You're needing a lot of help. Yeah.
Yeah. I will. Okay. I want to comment on that because there's some nuances there. I remember learning about digital marketing from Russell Brunson and a few other really solid digital marketers. And in the earlier phases of really good digital marketers selling how to sell information products, the big thing is like, you might not feel like an expert, but you just have to be 3 steps ahead of the person that you're helping. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I can, I'm 3 steps ahead. I can help them. But like, since reading books like Robert Greene's Mastery and thinking about like really like what does it take to be like a really high integrity guide to someone else who is able to like really solve specific problems, like there's like a yes and to that where it's like, yeah, you could be 3 steps ahead, but like you get that person to those 3 steps and you have no idea what to do on step 4, you might end up causing more damage to yourself and the other person. The other side of that is, I think you and I can probably speak to the fact that the things that we go through ourselves have multiple layers and like a sort of spiral to the things that we go through. Like I'm a business coach who's still learning about business. Mm-hmm. There are things that I'm still learning about. Like I teach people about how to create authentic content, and I still struggle with that perception management compulsion. And I'm still learning about layers about it, and it's still an ongoing process for me. And so so yes, you should be out of the hell version of it. You shouldn't currently be struggling with it to the point that it's debilitating your life. Mm-hmm. And also, I think there's that sort of dichotomy of like, you don't have to be a virtuoso at something to teach it. You don't have to be a paragon of perfection, and I don't think there is such a thing as a person who's like perfectly arrived out on the other side of something. But like, you have to be honest with yourself about like, dude, you're in the middle of like trying to figure out what happened in your last breakup. Why are you giving relationship coaching?
Yeah, I'm glad that you're speaking on this, because it could be a like one-way street to perfectionism failure. And for me, it's like, if I look at like, I think the easiest ones is just to do like, okay, if you're someone that knows how to teach somebody how to make money and you don't have money because of your life circumstances, which has happened to me many times, 100% of the time, I knew that I could use my skill set to go out into the world and acquire money. And I've done it. So I might have had times where I was in debt, negative numbers, but my bills got paid, my debt got paid. And I never questioned it because I'd gone through the hell and I'd acquired the data and I'd actually acquired the skill set to bring the awareness and apply it. Another one for me is physicality. I think that one's pretty obvious for me. And obviously you have a deep array and breadth of knowledge in that one. And then the most obvious one for me is relationships. That is actually the most obvious one for me. And like, because we know a lot and we know how to handle. We know that there's like preferable ways to handle certain situations. And so if you're a relationship coach and you're going through a breakup, like how are you handling that?
Yeah.
You know, and the people around you will know, but most importantly, you're gonna know. And I see that quite a lot. Or men's groups too. You know, I think men's groups is a really interesting conversation that we could probably go into. Maybe we'll do that on another time. But that's a really interesting thing that I see in the space right now.
Yeah, I think it is fascinating, right? Because one of the processes that we go through in our system is we create a step-by-step system with people to produce replicable results. And we won't work with people unless we know that we can, the person that we're working with can actually get the result with people. Like there's some sort of, either they've gotten the result for themselves in a way that we can create a system for it, or they've worked with other people and they've created results and we can create a system around that, which can then become the offer. Unless there is that in place, we're not going to work with someone, right? Like ethically, we're not going to, have someone be like, I just think that people could like have like a better mindset. And I just want to learn how to like market that and like make six figures, bro. Like it's just all in your, like, no, dude. We're going to like, what is the tangible steps that a person gets from a tangible point A to a tangible point B? What's the actual transformation? That needs to be mapped out. And that also, by the way, prevents the cognitive dissonance where it's like, I could have no money right now and I could run my own system and I would have money, right? Like I could put on 50 pounds of weight and I was a personal trainer, your mess becomes your message. I was about 100 pounds overweight as a teenager and I lost 100 pounds, give or take. And then like, I know the exact steps that I need to take to train and eat in a way that will help me lose weight and put on muscle and look a certain way. And so there's tangible steps that I can get to get these results. Whether or not I'm currently embodying that myself is like, there have been times where I've been very, very broke. There have been times where I haven't had a ton of money. I still knew how to make money. I still knew how to help people make money. I still knew how to help people with, and it's funny too with the relationship thing, right? Like I've ended up doing like a lot of, cause you, in business coaching, you end up coaching people on other things aside from just their business. Cause if someone's relationship is messing up their business, you kind of got to, go in there and like, this is an iffy subject, right? Because usually I would try to refer people out if there's something that's like outside of the scope. But let's just say that I've ended up coaching people outside of the scope of business.
Okay.
And there's a lot that I have to offer in terms of relationships. And also, dude, I'm such a mess in my own relationships. Like I am like, there's so many of my own triggers and my own little quibbles that I have had to work out. And, I've had some really healthy, wonderful relationships and I've had some like, whoa, super triggering, messy relationships. And like, and I still know communication systems. I still know like ways to self-regulate when you're dealing with another person's triggers. I still have all these systems and skills and things that I have used throughout to be able to help someone. Now, I wouldn't say that I would want to be a relationship coach necessarily, right? But I would say that like, even if I was broke, I'd have no qualms being a business coach because, well, first of all, in like 3 weeks, I wouldn't be broke anymore because I'd be making a bunch of people a bunch of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a big part of this hurdle that people have, which goes back to our first question, which is they haven't gotten enough data. They haven't made it. And like that's like how you actually get out of the hell. Because if you do it once or twice, it doesn't mean you're out. It's like you gotta get your numbers up. You gotta get your results up, and that compounds because over time, if I land myself broke, if you land yourself broke, there's a bit of cognitive dissonance about teaching people how to make money. But that cognitive dissonance can get easily rectified when I have had 100 success stories of running an ABC play versus somebody that is, teaching someone social media marketing and they they've only had one success story. It's been 1 out of 1. It's 100%, but there isn't a big supporting body that can help. And more and more, I've been more and more grateful for all of the rejection, failures, and as a byproduct, success stories that I have been able to cultivate over these past years. Because when I'm down in the owies, for whatever reason it is, I can actually just look at the reality of what has happened based off of the influence that I've had. And it melts it away. It melts it away in a really big way.
I will also say, to your point, if you're teaching people how to make money when you don't have money, it's like, you still know how to make money. You just maybe wouldn't coach people on how to manage money.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's hilarious.
It's like, hey, I know how to make it. The problem is I just know how to spend it more than I know how to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's hilarious. Okay, so back to one thing you said, which was linguistic challenges. So, brother, your superpower is saying what people do better than they do. And I know because you do it to me like twice a week since I've known you. I remember when we were first coming together, you're like, yeah, like this is what you should say. And I was just like, can you just tell people what I say? Because when I'm writing down word for word what you say. And so this linguistic challenge, like, is there some... because it's obviously going to be a case-by-case basis, but are there some like fundamentals, some foundationals that just allow you to be such a freaking wizard at this?
I'm going to take some time to think about that a little bit. This is actually something, in terms of like teaching people how to distill the essence of something. This is something that I've earned over a long time of writing copy. I was telling someone this story where when I was learning about digital marketing, I was learning about copywriting. My morning routine would be I'd make a big French press full of coffee. I'd roll 2 joints and I would sit down in front of my computer and I would write copy and make posts for Facebook for 2 to 3 hours. And I would just, and I would post a bunch of and I would go into random Facebook groups and post just to see what kind of reactions I would get. And I was hammering as much as I could learning how to do copywriting, and I'd read books about copywriting. I read like Jim Edwards and Dan Kennedy, and was like super into how I would like look at Russell Brunson, read his books, and like try to like figure out like, okay, that part really engaged me. Why? And then I'd try to write like him. I was really into this website called Testosterone Nation when I was learning how to work out. And I wanted to write articles for them. So I would go and I'd read a bunch of their articles, and then I would try to write my own articles matching the writing voice and the tone and the energy. And so this is something that I developed over time, right? And it's funny because now ChatGPT, you can kind of feed it a bunch of stuff and it'll try to match the writing tone the best that it can. And it still can't do it as good as a really good copywriter. Yeah. But it can do it pretty good. And it can do it there's moments where you're like, ooh, that's kind of like, that took me 15 years to be able to figure out how to do. And you're doing that pretty good right now. In terms of, there are a couple of fundamentals. And it's funny because I'm gabbing right now and I'm saying a lot because I'm trying to figure out as I go. But when it comes to writing and it comes to articulating, is how much can you say with as little as possible? How much can you distill down what you're saying using the least amount of words? And then when you're distilling it down, especially with a marketing perspective, how much can you speak to the emotional experience and the result as opposed to the process? The process is less important than the emotional experience of what the challenges that a person is going through. As much as the result is more important than talking about like when we're talking about our service, I say we help you get to a point where you're making $12,000 to $25,000 a month, working around 30 hours a month. I'm not saying like, okay, well, we're going to work with you for 3 months. And in the first one, we're going to do your system. And then we're going to set up a lead generation system. And then I'm going to teach you how to make content. I don't tell you about the process. I tell you about the result. $12,000 to $25,000 a month, working 30 hours a week.
Yep. Yeah. This is so cool. Because you and I have been, we've been really steeping ourselves in the Sermon on the Mount. And last night I was particularly impacted by something that ties directly into this. And it's when you pray, do not use vain repetitions as the heathen do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. And oh my goodness, coaches, spiritual people, they sit there, what's your intention today? And it could just be like strength through the Spirit. But instead, it's this whole paragraph. And it's like, I don't know, I'm just starting to see this distillation process as being really, really, key for prayer, key for
The
pitch.
Sermon on the Mount has everything, hey?
It actually does. It actually does. It actually does. How to become a successful business coach? Like, just dissect the Sermon on the Mount properly.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, now here's maybe one final thing for us here today, because this is something that I have been not able to really figure out for years. And it also ties into linguistic challenges and refining the message and all these things. It's something I haven't been able to figure out for years. So for years, I've had like the same body of people, which are people I love. People on the pursuit of personal development, helping me become more in their opinion. And this internal debate has to do with when I show up authentically, okay, sometimes it really upsets people. And I'm speaking the truth. But I'm not lying, I'm not bullying. I'm just speaking a very direct truth. I'm an Aries, many Aries. I'm Matthew. I'm just direct. And it rubs people the wrong way, let's say. And so I'll have these people come forward to me and they'll be like, on one hand, what you have to say, Matthew, is very valuable. It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. That's a big one, right? It's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. If you just did this, this, and that, it would be better received. And then the next week, these people will be encouraging me to be fully authentic. And I haven't been able to figure this out yet. I've had some excellent reflections from people that have definitely assisted in the merging of these two things. But if we're talking about a trust recession and authenticity, and then at the same time saying to people, the way that you're showing up authentically is causing people to not trust you, what's your process?
Yeah. So from a marketing perspective, what I would say is the way that you communicate is super polarizing, and that's a good thing. What that is going to do for you is it's going to help you resonate with the people who are going to really, really vibe with you. And it's going to repel people who aren't able to receive you. I was going to say your medicine, because we're talking about spiritual. They aren't able to receive your medicine fully. But it's polarity, right? It's like when the more authentic you are, the more feathers you tend to ruffle. The more you speak what you actually think, the more you tend to upset people. And the irony is that like all these people, they're not saying like what you're saying is wrong, dude. What they're saying is like the way that you're saying this is very, very confronting to me in the way that I like to perceive myself and perceive reality. Yeah. And I don't have the wherewithal to be able to receive that fully. And so can you soften and prepackage the way that you're communicating and showing up so that your authenticity is more palatable to me? Fuck off. Fuck off.
Right. It's like, I want your message. I just don't like how you said it. Okay. So then for other coaches that aren't as specific as me, what's the rectification of authenticity versus changing the verbiage or the linguistics, how you said that?
Yeah.
Is that not inauthentic?
So this is the challenge, right? This is the thing that I was talking about before, where when a person's like, oh, I got to do the hook, the structure, they start to think about like, how do I prepackage what I'm talking about? And it is one of these funny things where you kind of have to learn about what communication styles land and resonate with people. Like what I find works really well is telling stories. And oftentimes it's ordering the way that you're expressing yourself, right? So if you're creating a piece of content on Instagram, usually what you would do is you would address the problem, the person. So it's the call out first. So it's like, if you're struggling to make sales because you're a spiritual coach who believes that money is evil, then you got to get your shit together, right? And that might be confronting, but like, you're starting with the call out and you're helping the person self-identify, right? So you're still being authentic, but first you're like, the hook is just addressing the specific person and disqualifying every other person who you don't want to be watching that material to like turn away, and then just attract the people who you want to have listen to you.
Excellent. Right? Excellent. So it's almost less about verbiage, and it's almost more about the like order of the delivery.
Yeah, because the reality is you don't want to be like, if you're changing your verbiage when you're doing your social media, and then someone comes and starts coaching with you, and you start talking to them directly, they're like, oh my gosh, like, where did this person come from? I think, and this is something that I see, like, we have some friends that make good content, but it's good content. It's not content that's authentically them. Like, they'll show up as like this serious like person and they're speaking, but like really they're like a silly goof, and they're really fun, and they're like, they have all this like cool energy, and none of that energy makes it to their content because they're trying to present themselves in that persona, in this social media personality kind of way. And they're attached to that personality. They're attached to that presentation because they feel like that's going to be better received. It fucks them. What I have noticed is the most magnetic thing in the world is a person who owns their own taste, is a person who owns just who they are and what they're up to. And I struggle with this too. Like, I'm like a recovering perception management addict, you know, like, this is something that like, I had a joke with a girl I dated where when she first saw my Instagram, all she saw was me doing ice baths and talking about marketing. And she's like, oh, I just thought you were the ice bath hook guy. And I was actually kind of surprised to see that you were this person with substance and a poet and, you know, had all this like emotional intelligence. And, you know, I just thought you were ice bath hook guy. And I was like, fuck, I was ice bath. That is me.
You were.
I'm ice bath hook guy. Oh no.
I remember ice bath hook guy. That was a hilarious chapter. Ice bath hook guy.
Right.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
So
I think the process is really gradually allowing more of yourself to shine through, while still realizing that if you prattle on, or if you don't, like, you have to be aware of the type of user on these platforms. Like, if you're on Instagram, people are fucking scrolling and they're mindless and they're in a reactive state, and they will scroll right through if you don't capture their attention, or if they don't feel like you're calling them out directly. And that's why it's like, if you're a spiritual coach who won't sell because you think money's evil, they'll be like, oh, that's me. I'm going to stop scrolling for a hot second. But if you're like, hey guys, I just want to tell you about a thing that I think I see a lot of people doing wrong. And I see this all the time. It's like, you're fucking, it's prattling on like the pagans do.
The heathens.
Yeah, the heathens. Who think they'll be heard for their many words, right? It's like, no. Call out the person and the problem immediately. Tell a story about how you solved that problem for yourself or a client, and then have a little call to action. That's all you got to do. And you don't have to stifle your personality. When you're telling a story, it's impossible to be inauthentic unless you're changing the details of the story, because you're just telling what actually happened. Share, like, learn to tell stories, you know, and infuse your personality in that. And that would be the antidote to that, I'd say.
Right. So you can still be authentic. It's not about changing verbiage. It's not about that. Yeah. I like it.
It's just and the thing is, like, the more you change your verbiage to try and be more palatable, the less the people who have the same taste that you do are going to be able to find you. You don't have to be an unsalted saltine when you're actually an all-dressed Ruffles chip. You know?
The salt loses its saltiness.
Just thrown out and trampled underfoot. It's all in there, guys. Read it twice a day until it lands.
Excellent.
Well, guys, I think this is a good place to wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah?
That was fun pilot.
Yeah. So guys, thank you for listening to the Conscious Grounding Podcast. If you would like to get a free resource where Matthew and I run through the exact step-by-step system that we use with our clients to currently help people build $12,000 to $25,000 a month coaching businesses, we have the entire free course, the entire system for free. I'll include a link in the description of this episode. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you're on Spotify, leave us a little review, leave a little comment, and let us know what you thought. And add us to Instagram. We're going to include our Instagram things and send us messages for what you want to hear us talk about next. Really, really stoked for this new format of this podcast, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Conscious Grounding.